We're live.
Okay. All right. Deputy Mayor McKenzie, welcome and thank you for filling in for Mayor Rainey on our regular Tuesday morning update to city residents.
Good morning, Andy. Thank you for having me. And yes, I am Deputy Mayor Vivian McKenzie, and I am filling in for the mayor who had a conflict in his schedule today. We have a lot of great talking points to let our listeners know about the great things that are happening within our city. Do you want to get started with that? We're starting with our COVID data.
Yeah, so we always start, we started this around the public health message and we'll continue that. The city gets access to data from the county on the active case rate. By last count, which was on the 11th, there are 100 active cases, which is COVID cases. They resolve after 2 weeks. So they're active cases within the last 2 weeks. 100 is down a little bit from 122 or so a week ago. The numbers have been kind of varying a little over 100 since the numbers started coming up a bit. So there's still COVID out there. There's also vaccination data available through the county website. And last count, it's about a week old right now, but there were several thousand people had at least one dose in the city, roughly a tenth of the population.
Okay, speaking about vaccinations, we do know that today there are extras at Westchester Community College. So if you are 18 or older, you can go on to health.westchester.gov, register, and go to Westchester Community College in Valhalla today to get a vaccination. So if you're in need of one, please take the opportunity, register first and get an appointment, and then go get your vaccination. Andy, that COVID data, the 100 cases active, does that include everything, the hospitalizations and all of that, or do we have specific information?
Well, first of all, for folks who really want to get the data themselves, it's very easy. You go to the city Facebook page, click on the map, it takes you to the county dashboard, and there you can see the active cases for all the municipalities in Westchester with totals. And that does have information. I was just giving the new positive tests that are on the dashboard. There's also an accumulating total of fatalities. There's accumulating total of everybody who's been tested and countywide. And as I said before, there's a separate dashboard for the vaccination program. So there's a lot of information available. And yes, that 100 is just active new positive cases that the county health department is tracking of city residents.
Okay. All right. So people just be aware, COVID is still here. Please continue to wear your mask, social distance, get your vaccinations. We are now where everybody, I believe, 16 and above can get a vaccination. So please do so. Help our community stay healthy and stay strong. Let's move on. We have exciting Parks Cleanup Day coming up.
Yeah, I want to say a good segue on that is being outdoors is one of the safest and most rewarding things you can do on the tail end of a pandemic. So yeah, so Parks Cleanup Day this Saturday. The information for registration and contacting the Parks Department is up on the city Facebook. And it's basically just volunteers getting together. Our superintendent, Kathy Montaldo, and her staff, as well as the DPW workers, will be out supporting volunteers. And you get trash bags, given out, and there's some beverages that are donated by local businesses, and people, pick up some trash in the parks. And it's a nice thing to do in the spring before the leaves come out and before poison ivy comes up, and along roadsides. It's really the best time to do that cleanup.
Okay. So folks, if you're available, please come out and help. It's great to be outside. Our parks are beautiful. We have beautiful parks here for everyone to enjoy, and we can really use your volunteerism to help keep them pristine.
I wanted to mention, Deputy Mayor, while we're at it, just to give recognition to our own public workers, we've been wanting to clean up a major trash and dump site in the ravine by McGregor Brook, kind of down below the Kylie Community Center. And it's in the process. Actually, they're doing another, I think, a third dump truck load out today. But late last week, we got access through the construction site at 645 Main Street. They actually built a little road and cut their fence. And our team came in and got couches, mattresses, and other junk that was in there. So that site's been so highly visible from Central for so long. It's great to see it cleaned up. So the city will tackle the real hard to move stuff, and really support volunteers and taking care of any area where you're seeing trash and you'd like it to be cleaner. Please
Yeah.
go to the Parks Department.
Kudos to our DPW department. Just want to say thank you for that. That is hard work. I'd like to say to our residents that our city is not a dumping ground. We have facilities. You can bring a large trash to our DPW, go to City Hall, purchase your ticket, and you can bring stuff that you need to dump there versus putting it in our beautiful, beautiful city. So please, everyone needs to be aware. We're cleaning up, but we're asking you to take pride in your city and not dump things that, just don't dump.
Yeah. I would like to segue from that over to water quality for a minute, actually, Deputy Mayor,
Sure.
because last night at our council meeting, Dave Rambos, the head of our Public Works, presented the annual stormwater quality report that the city files, and it's really important to understand that anytime the rain hits pavement or grass or anywhere and goes down a storm drain, it's going to carry whatever it picks up along the way that could impact water quality. That might be just trash. It could be grease that's leaking out of a car. It could be lawn chemicals. It could be a lot of different things which are bad for water quality. One of the most important things the city does, and we do a lot to manage and try to prevent water pollution. Most people don't realize it, but that street sweeper that's out there, it totals, let's see, we added it up. It's over the course of a year, it sweeps the equivalent of 624 acres of parking lot and 2,700 miles of road. That's just multiplying the number of times it goes out by the amount of space it covers. And that's picking up dirt and other contaminants that otherwise would wash into streams. And just the dirt is one of the worst pollutants when it comes to wildlife habitat and stream water quality. And that goes for inspecting construction sites as well. One of the rules of thumb in the construction industry is it's probably going to rain right after you expose the soil. So having those hay bales out and having our code enforcement folks out there making sure that construction sites are properly set up in case it does rain, so the soil doesn't wash down storm drains is really key. So thanks to the team for that and the city council for support on that. Water quality is something the city takes very seriously.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Tell us a little bit about National Public Works Month. I understand that's for May.
So yeah, so May is a month when the American Public Works Association typically sort of promotes the value of public works, the value of infrastructure, the value of the people who maintain it and build it. And so we will be doing a special promotion through our social media to celebrate that with some photos of some of our equipment and some special recognition of that staff as we put together a kind of an annual calendar highlighting the different city services and highlighting how our city residents can access services. May is going to be dedicated to public works. We'll go forward each month. There'll be a different focus. But yeah, so it's a time, and we keep seeing these reports about the generally dilapidated state of infrastructure on a national level, and there are huge costs involved, and it's long-term investment. It's not the kind of thing you can easily, sort of cut a ribbon on. A lot of times it's underground, so investment in that infrastructure is really important. To that end as well, the city council was discussing last night some work we're doing, applying for external funding actually from the federal government to replace our water valves, which are part of our water system, is so important, as well as hydrants, which are basically the valves above the ground. They're also really important. Both of them function together to maintain water pressure, obviously provide fire safety, and to keep the water moving, and then to stop the water when we need to do repairs to water lines. And a lot of times our underground water valves malfunction because they get used so old. And then you see the guys out there. So if we have a water line break, and there was one on North Division over the winter, it was a snowy night. It was raining, and the truck was out there. They had to excavate the pipe where the leak was, and then they had to go and shut down the water so that they could repair the leak. Because otherwise, if you replace a chunk of pipe, water would just come gushing out. And as they worked their way out, turning off valves, going down Main Street and going up Division Street, they found valves that didn't work. So they had to go out a little further in order to isolate that repair area. And of course, that leads to further disruption and takes longer and so on. So getting those valves replaced is really important.
Yeah, I think people should realize that, a lot of times we don't know what's going on. We don't see it because it's underground, but there's a lot of important work that happens with our water infrastructure. And to get these grants and to be able to get this work done is just paramount for the city.
Just turning the page a little bit here, Deputy Mayor, I wanted you to reflect a little bit on the conversation last night on two really important policy issues for the city. One was the marijuana legalization that the state has done that has local implications, and the other had to do with riverfront development. So wherever you want to start.
So let's start with the riverfront developments. We had a lot of people come out and voice their concerns about a proposed project that was presented to the council, not last night, but the week before. It's the Ginsburg project. And I want to again say thank you to all those people who came out to voice their concerns. Our community is important, and the way that we develop it is really important, and we need to hear your voices. The project that Mr. Ginsburg presented was just a presentation to kind of let us know what he was thinking about doing. Just to remind people that this is in the infant stages. It has not gone before any of our boards. It was really just kind of, hey, this is what I want to do. And it was great to hear folks say, I believe in developing the waterfront and it'd be great, but maybe we need to look at it more so that it fits our community. Or, hey, I don't want, the watershed view to be taken away. This is the area that I live in, the congestion, the traffic. So we had a lot of information and comment come out. And that was great. So we have some direction. But again, that project is just, it was a presentation. So we're moving forward. We don't know what his next steps are going to be, but there will always be community contact and opportunities for people to speak out about what is going to be built there. And perhaps there were some suggestions that maybe we should have a group that kind of puts together a plan for the waterfront. And we do have a waterfront plan, but may need some updating, and that may be something that the council can talk about, forming a board that would do some of that development. So we look forward to moving forward and talking about that and seeing how we develop the waterfront.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, Deputy Mayor, that I think everybody agrees that some form of transit-oriented development makes sense. And
Yep.
And the city does have zoning, and it does have its local waterfront redevelopment plan where the community came together and the council made decisions about what is the appropriate scale and height in matters like that. Mr. Ginsburg's proposal exceeded those limits. It was oftentimes developers will try to do anyway. And so those kinds of proposals are likely to occur. There's an opportunity there for the city to add to its tax base and create amenities and create sort of a more attractive gateway as people get off the train while accommodating commuter parking. But it has to be done in the right way. And
Absolutely.
I know that this city council is not going to agree to anything that isn't in a very, very thoroughly reviewed and goes through the whole process. So we will get presentations from time to time. It helps to foster public awareness and debate. I mean, as the mayor actually pointed out last night as well, it helps to alert other developers who may have different ideas that there may be an opportunity. And so we welcome people to approach City Hall, find out what the limitations on the site are, and start those conversations. And we try to move them into the public as quickly as possible so the public can participate as well.
All right. And as you said, I mean, this council is looking for what's in the best interest of the city. And I think, people have the feeling that developers can come in and do whatever they want. And, that's why we have zoning and codes and things like that. So they can't do that. So kudos to everyone again who came out and let's see how we can develop our waterfront so it best suits the citizens of our city.
Absolutely. So now, how about looking at the legalization of marijuana or cannabis? Because this is really, really important state action, which has put a kind of a policy dilemma and an opportunity for every municipality, which was discussed last night.
Yeah. So there is, marijuana is legalized and that's what it is. It's legalized in the state of New York. There's a lot of things that we as a city has to look at in terms of how we bring it to the city, if we bring it to the city. It was the initial conversation last night with the council. There's a program where you're automatically in this, and if you decide to opt out, then the city council would have to determine if they wanted to opt out or not. And opting out means that the city would not be entitled to any of the revenue, and they would lose any kind of benefit. So the initial conversation appears that, and most people don't want to opt out, but we need to talk about regulation and so forth as the state provides us with regulation and how we bring it to our city. So initially, we want people to know, there's different people who are looking at it, who may want to invest in business in Peekskill, and they kind of have to know some things if Peekskill is going to be the place for them. So that's kind of what's on our plate right now, looking to see if we're going to stay in, and then waiting for the regulations from the state to come out. Councilwoman Aguadella put some facts out there, in terms of what you can do privately in your home in terms of smoking or in terms of cultivating. So those things are here and now. She also, and I don't have the information with me, but in terms of being stopped for smoking and those kinds of things. And so that stuff is no longer. So we behoove you to take a look at the regulations and what changes there are. And we look forward to moving forward with this progress to see how it's going to work within our city.
Yeah, and
What do you add to that, Andy?
Yeah, well, I thought it was a really great summary of the policy question. Whether or not the city council will want to use its opt out. It looks like probably not. And then what kinds of regulation in zoning should be imposed. The state law does speak to questions about distance from church, distance from school, things like that. So we need to get more information about that, and our staff is actively participating in webinars through the Conference of Mayors and others to gather information. And the state itself, as you said, hasn't completed its rulemaking process, so we'll find out more. In the meantime, there are these prospective investors and business people who are looking at the market and hoping to get the state to award them a highly coveted license, either to be a grower, to be a distributor, to be a retailer, a lounge, and things like that. One of the related issues that was discussed last night was the idea of that the city might want to take another look at smoking in parks, because right now there are many communities in the state and across the country that have banned cigarette smoking in parks, playgrounds, and places like that. And just as it's banned in restaurants and on airplanes nowadays. So that might be something the city wants to take another look at, because the marijuana smoking kind of heightens the concern on some city residents' part that's that they'd rather have it prohibited or avoided when they're in the park. So that's a policy which the city council also probably needs to take. We started thinking about that, and we're going to collect some information and come back to the city council with what those smoking bans look like. You always get into the weeds. Does it include vaping, for example, which has a slightly different kind of secondhand smoke impact? Do you want to create a designated area, where it's okay? These kinds of questions come up. Like any policy issue, we have to review them.
Right, kind of to iron it out. One of the things we also brought up last night about this is community input. So we may do a survey or kind of find out what the community feels and what they would like to see in terms of dispensaries, or if they wanted this within the city. So that's something we may look at. And the other thing is that we are very much aware that any kind of businesses are to be looked at first by people who have been so much damaged by marijuana. Maybe they had a marijuana conviction, someone in their family did, someone who has suffered from the prior laws. So we're very aware of that. We're not looking for a big box company to come in here to start. We are looking at following the actual rules that the state designated for who should benefit from this. So don't want people to think that when we say people are calling, it's all kinds of people are calling, but we know what this is intended for, and we intend to follow those guidelines.
Yep. Yeah. No, the city residents and others, there's a lot of interest in these licenses. They're going to be worth a lot of money.
And the licenses are issued by the state, not by the city. That's the other thing to be really important about.
right, exactly. So the city can do some rulemaking around zoning, and certainly for smoking in parks and things like that. But the state controls the license process, and there's also a revenue side to the equation with a sales tax, which a significant portion of which goes to localities that are hosting facilities. So we'll learn more about the likely sort of revenue expectation on that. So the city council could consider that as well. So we talked about that. I wanted to just spend a minute or two on the fire department awards event, which took place on Friday. I know Deputy Mayor was there.
Absolutely.
I think we had 4 or 5 city council people there, and some city staff, as well as a lot of the firefighters. So perhaps you'd like to talk to that a little bit.
Absolutely. It was an award ceremony that had been put off, for a while because of COVID. But nonetheless, our firefighters are hard at work, and it was amazing to hear the number of calls. So there were 100 to 300 fire calls in 2019. There was the Sniden family who helped on several of those calls. There was a mud rescue at Blue Mountain. There was a rescue at Spins on the Hudson in 2019. The list just goes on and on and on of what our firefighters are doing in our community. So it was really nice to see. It was great to see the officers dressed in their formals and accepting their awards and accepting them with pride. And I was proud to know, that we have such a great fire department, and, wish them all well and thank them very much for their service.
And Deputy Mayor it was timely in a way, because just as that ceremony was wrapping up, there was a fire call.
Yeah.
And it was down Main Street, just past 645 Main Street. And they're the very same people who had been giving out and receiving recognition were directing traffic and doing the investigation at the fire scene. So it's pretty amazing to see how quickly everybody responded. And to hear some of the stories about some of the rescues, one of them, the Spins on Hudson, there was an individual up on a roof, and they were doing 2019 because of COVID. They had done the 2020 yet recognition,
Right.
but there was someone on the roof, there was smoke, it was dangerous. It was a rescue, that saved a life. There was another incident just on the rescue side of things, because they do so much work just running out on alarms and gas leaks and things like that all the time. But the rescue in Blue Mountain was really interesting to hear about, because it involved somebody literally, you wonder why, but had walked into the pond and had sunk up to his waist in mud and was stuck there and in danger of drowning along with his dog. And the fire department had to really kind of wrangle him out of there using various equipment and making sure that the person was safely transported. So these are some good stories for people to be aware of.
Yep. Amazing things. Amazing.
I wanted to take a quick look at Facebook, because we are Facebook Live, and we appreciate people kind of tuning in. There are a couple comments here. I just want to review them. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. So let me just take a quick spin through them. All right, Deputy Mayor, see what we got.
Sure.
So and they come in all shapes and sizes. There's one basically, do you have a position on overcrowding in housing in Peekskill? There's that question. There's another related one related to housing, which has to do with the illegal conversion or subdivision of homes into multifamily. So I don't know if you want to say a word or two about code enforcement or public health, but that's
Yeah. Well, overcrowding is a problem, and it is a risk, and it's dangerous. With fires and things like that, we do not want that, and there's code enforcement to alleviate that. So our position is that we do not want overcrowding, and that our code enforcement does look at that. If there are instances, those are things that should be reported to our building department so that they can be reviewed, to make sure that people are living in a safe habitat.
Yeah,
and what was the second part of that?
Well, it's a good kind of follow up to talking about the fire department, because this is really, it's an issue of safety for firefighters too. When they're responding, if there are illegal conversions with walls or with doors that have locks on them, when it's supposed to be just a bedroom without, those things can really endanger firefighters and make it much harder for them to respond to emergencies. So it has a big impact on firefighter safety as well. There are a couple other comments and questions. There's a long one about, yeah, sorry, I can't get into that one, but there's a sort of question about the impact on teens of marijuana legalization. So it would be legal for people 21 and over, right? Like cigarettes, but does it have kind of a spillover effect on younger people? I don't know what you're hearing in the community, people talking about that. But that's a question I think a lot of people have. And we were discussing it at the staff meeting this morning. Tuesday McDonald, head of our youth bureau, Kathy Montaldo, head of the park department, you're sort of talking about this question of the impact of legalization on youth. If you have any particular comments about that.
As a grandmother of an 18-year-old, for me, I find that it's one more thing that distracts our youth. So with alcohol and with cigarettes, there's regulation, there's guidelines, but children find ways to get access. So I think we have to be really studious in teaching our children the effects, just as we do with alcohol and cigarettes. So teaching them the effects and what can happen, and making sure that we also invest in drug programs so that, and education, so that kids are aware and that there are a means for people who are affected with this. So it's, that's a personal opinion. I've heard that a lot within the community. People are concerned, and you have both. People are saying this is for 21 and over, and we understand that, but people are saying, how will this affect our children? So yes, it's a conversation to be had, and that's why I suggested that perhaps we do a survey to see how people really feel about this coming to our community. Mm-hmm. And that's just an honest opinion. So,
yeah, and I think it also, the question about smoking in parks, particularly in and around playgrounds, comes up as a very practical question as well, as far as children and their exposure to secondhand smoke, and also, frankly, people who are intoxicated and whatever behaviors come out of that. It really depends on the person. Some people, you just don't want to be anywhere near them when they're intoxicated. And so there's it may make sense really to look at some rules around smoking in parks, for example. I think we covered there's this one comment which is quite lengthy. I would encourage you to look at it maybe after our meeting. But it's basically a comment that opposes legalization, and for various reasons. It sort of says there's a slippery slope. What's next? What other drugs will be legalized? Recreational heroin, for example. And so these matters, they really are matters of state regulation and public health. And I don't see the city. We kind of have to decide how we'll make use of the jurisdiction that we do have. But people have questions related to other drugs as well. So we're at the 11:30 mark, Deputy Mayor. I appreciate the time you've taken to go over some of the topics. Is there anything else that you want to say or close out with?
Nope. Other than wishing everybody a great Tuesday. Enjoy the great weather that we're going to have for the next couple of days. And just be well and continue to be COVID safe.
Thank you so much. Have a great.
You're welcome.
All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.